And away we go.
We're good.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Straight Chilling. Each week, we watch and review a horror film for your entertainment. You can send all questions and comments to straightchillingpodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget to keep chilling.
Yeah, we straight chillin', serial killing. 5 cold villains on the mic, got you reeling. 5-star ratings from the floor to the ceiling. If you get your 1-star, no time for feelings. Got a demon DJ, all the ones and twos. By the name of someone, so don't get confused. So grab a seat by the fire, roll some Marlowe and two. And prepare to hear the legend of the straight chillin' crew.
What up, nerds? And welcome to another sausage and kraut-filled episode of Straight Chilling. My name's Bob, and I'll be your host for the evening. This is episode number 259, recorded on Monday. No, it's not. It's Sunday.
You fucking idiot.
I have one job. One
Time
job
means
only,
nothing right now.
and I can't do it. Today's March 22nd, 2020. Tonight we're talking about the cabinet of Dr. Caligari from 1920. Before we get into it, let me introduce everyone else on the show. First up, calling in from Astoria, Oregon, we got our boy Randy Gandy G. Landy. What's up, man?
How do remote workers?
I'm working outside, dude. I got no breaks. No breaks at all.
I just meant that you watch a lot of TV when your time was.
Oh, yeah.
Good. It's not a
Yeah.
good joke.
It's not very good. You're right.
No.
But I appreciate it.
I have Rona.
Next up, a much funnier person calling in from Southern Korea. We got our boy Soju.
What up?
Oh.
It's your boy Rona Stains. That's for my boy G Baby.
Rona Stains.
He requested Rona Stains, and
That's
I
pretty
deliver.
I didn't know we could request this whole
pretty
time.
Well, my boy G Baby is
G.
G, softest G ever.
my boy G Baby is
G
top of the
baby.
list for requests. So.
G, baby.
Oh Jesus!
Last but not least, making his triumphant return to the Straight Chilling podcast, we got our boy Anthony. What's up, man?
Oh,
Living
damn.
free here in Orlando, Florida.
Orlando, Florida.
wait, when did we start the format of introducing ourselves like pro wrestlers?
I've been pitching that for a long time now.
Oh, shit.
Keep rolling.
Oh God, he killed a
Thank-
man.
Thanks for listening to the show.
Yes, absolutely. Anthony, why don't you let everybody know why you're on the show? What do you do? You do
What the
things.
fuck are you doing here,
People
man?
want to know.
So Rob and I have a very intimate relationship.
Oh, yeah.
He gives me all these
We know.
sexual privileges. So,
Uh-huh.
and
I
that's
licked
why
her
I'm
asshole
here.
a little bit.
Yeah.
Like that. Mhm.
I like big salads. Big salads.
Yeah, so I'm from Something Ghoulish. We're a horror movie platform that kind of explores the genre and these academic perspectives, so to say. We have a series of podcasts and editorials and videos that you can all find on somethingghoulish.com. And today, I'm ready to get ghoulish with the Straight Chilling crew.
Whoa,
That's
Anthony.
cross-pollination. That branding
Very
is
nice.
cross-pollinated as fuck.
Very nice.
So,
That's right.
Anthony, you were on this podcast last year for
Oh,
an
God.
episode of Lords of Chaos, where we talked about metal music and all kinds of things. We enjoyed having you. You did a great job. But on that episode, just a little under a year ago, you made a promise to your fans that I'm sure everyone remembers and is holding.
Absolutely.
We're all
Yep, I
waiting
remember this
for it.
100%.
You remember it. Yeah, and at the time, Anthony promised that next April 1st, which is now coming up very soon, he would be doing one of his famous deep dive videos into the cooter. He said April 1st, 2020, he would be doing that. So I'm looking forward to that. I know that you are delivering on that promise.
Yeah. Because you're a man of your word, and we all know that about you.
Anthony's heart rate just jumped like 30 beats per minute.
I already have so much to do. Damn it.
So I can't say much on the project right now. We're in we're in pre-production. We have a lot of amazing people. We brought in some extra screenwriters for the project. I'm really excited for the cinematographers we have on this. We're really doing some other dimensional work. It's like a fever dream, if you will.
Other dimensional, does that imply that it's not happening in this dimension?
You can't even do it. You can't even. No,
really, the April Fool's Day joke is that we're not getting that and that you look like a fool now, Juice.
No, I just want to say that I trust that it is coming out, and I look forward to seeing it next.
This really depends on where COVID-19 is at this time.
Oh, yeah.
And if we can
I don't want to blame it all on 9/11.
It's already everywhere.
9/11 and everything, you can't be expected to do all that.
Dean Cundy is shooting this YouTube video for Anthony. It's going to be great. John Carpenter's providing a soundtrack.
Ah, yes.
You got to tune in April 1st, youtube.com/something ghoulish.
Here we go.
I think. Right? Cool.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Before we get into it, let's tackle some housekeeping. We got one more week to vote on our April poll pick. It's up on our Patreon website currently. The theme for April is Alien Invasion. The three movies are Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Alien, and Slither. Get your votes in before April 1st. Alien.
Wait, Bob.
Hey, man. I'm taking it.
Whoa.
How those numbers looking, Bob?
How are those numbers looking? Alien still winning. Slither, slightly behind, not terribly. Body Snatchers, nobody wants us to talk about Body Snatchers. I was kind of hoping Body Snatchers would win. Being honest.
Which one?
Because that's your pick?
No, that was
no, I know.
We don't tell. We don't kiss and tell on this show.
Oh, we don't?
Actually,
well, fuck it.
Wasn't this one a bit of a hodgepodge? Didn't we just kind of throw movies that we've been kind of just defaulting lately?
These are good Alien movies.
Yeah,
I hope you guys like Autopilot because we ride on it about 3 days a week.
And those are the days we cast.
True. In other Patreon news, we reopened the You Pick the Flick tier earlier today, and
I'm
all
sure
5
there's
spots.
still spots available.
There are not. All
my
5
God.
spots went immediately.
My boy G-Baby slept in again.
Baby. That West Coast time, man. That's why I always say.
If it's fucked him a
EST.
couple times, yeah.
EST. Yeah, he's a sleepy boy, but that's all right.
Sorry,
Big thanks
G-Baby.
A lot of
Big
lip
thanks
service for
to,
G's today.
Yeah. Big thanks to everybody that woke up in time to nab a spot. We'll be talking about those movies in the next 3 months here. And the way it's looking, since every new release is getting pushed back, we might just be blasting through them pretty quickly. So we'll see what the future holds. Thanks, coronavirus. Last bit of Patreon news. We got a brand new Patreon supporter. Actually, he's rejoined the fold.
Ah, okay.
A big nasty shouts outs to Gary Lugosi.
Let's do it.
Thank you, sir. As is tradition, straight chilling.
Slap my ass!
You paused.
Yeah, dude. Dude, let's give him a clean slap my ass. Give it clean.
You double down.
Slap my ass!
In the ass.
Well, that was pretty
right
clean.
in the ass.
In the ass.
I need you to
Slap
slap inside of the interior portion of my ass.
Okay.
Please.
It's a very thorough request. Thank you.
Oh,
I'm not here to
man.
half-ass it.
Here to
full ass
inside ass it.
everything.
We inside ass it. Big salads. Straight Sean loves big salads. Justin, what do you got going on?
Dude, let's talk horror vidget games, please. I have a new video game review up on our YouTube page. You can check us out at youtube.com/straight chilling podcast. And there you will find a brand new horror video game review for Alien Isolation from 2014. That was the game that scared the shiz out of me back in February of this year. And now
He called the shit shiz.
Yeah, it did.
Aren't you being a little stupid?
Yeah, just a scotch. I am still currently playing BioShock, and I will play that until next week. So you can check us out at twitch.tv/Straight Chilling Podcast. And then next week, Resident Evil 3, the remake, is coming out. So that will be my game for April. So I'm very excited about that. But I have a week and a half.
Remaster or a remake?
It's like a remake, redo.
So it's
like updated, but they change some things. Like it's still like the core like game, but it's like with the updated graphics.
It's not
maybe they'll
first person
add
or
some
anything?
things. So yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Same thing they did. They did the same thing last year with Resident Evil 2 remake. So
Yeah,
like,
Grandpa.
Yeah, you old man.
Get off my ass, boys.
This ain't Pong.
You kids are just too
Headstrong!
Nice inclusion there, Randy.
Very good. Very good. Cool. Anything else, Jake?
Oh.
Are you done?
And it's your segment.
You derailed the man with that dope
I
song.
know. I think that with the dope, it's so good.
Oh man.
No, I think that's it. I think this house has
All right.
been kept.
Has been kept. All right. Cool. Let's talk about what we've been watching this week.
Hey gang, what you been watching?
Randy, what you been watching?
Well, with everything going on, we've been keeping it light with a bunch of King of the Hill, which I've introduced Becky to, and which she greatly enjoys, which just makes me the proudest man in the world because
Pocket sand.
You can only, dude, you can only get up to like season 7 though.
we're about
Or-
season 5, so we got a little in the
Okay.
tank still.
All
I haven't
right.
gone past that yet.
Somewhere
I heard that
around
once Tom
there.
Petty starts getting involved, it gets a little iffy.
Oh my
but-
lord.
As much as I love the man,
Pour
but
one out for Petty.
yeah. Let's see. So other than that, though, the only thing that we've really started that was fresh for me was American Horror Story 80. It's 84, right?
Yeah,
I always
1984.
fuck that
Oh
up.
yeah, is that the newest one?
It's the newest one, and we've got a few episodes in, and I'm actually surprised at how much I like it. I feel like the slasher format is a really good choice for the pacing of that show, which normally just sticks in my craw really badly.
Right in there.
Yeah,
You gotta
Cramps
slap
Randy.
it out.
it's just kind of like in other, I'm more like in Asylum in particular. Just shit would just keep happening, and shit
Yeah.
was just thrown against the walls, and that's sort of like the overwhelming feeling I have about the show in general.
Yeah.
So I skipped several seasons, but I was interested in this one, and I finally got a chance to watch it, and I think that it actually is a perfect match for that. Like so far, I love
Yeah,
that
you're
they're-
still in the first half though. Just
I know,
just give it
which is always where it
Wait for
looks
it to
the
get
strongest.
yeah.
It's always strongest up in the first few episodes, but I'm gonna be bold. I'm gonna be a little. Oh, I can't do it. There it is.
Can't talk and coordinate at
Uh,
the same time.
Oh man, I'm gonna be a little headstrong and say that it's so far so good, and I haven't really read any sort of reaction on it. I remember Roanoke got a lot of backlash. I remember, but most every season has some level of backlash from a group or two. In this case, I don't know what that landscape looks like culturally, but I'm enjoying myself with it, and I was really surprised that I did.
Sweet
That's it.
deal.
Yeah.
All right. Juice, what you been watching?
I watched Kingdom season 2 that dropped about a week and a half ago on Netflix. It's that Korean zombie film that's kind of like set during like a medieval period. It's about 6 episodes. They're a little bit shorter than an hour, so it doesn't take too long to get through. And it really picks up. If you like season 1 of that show, then it picks like right back up there. And it mostly centers on like the same kind of characters, same conflict and everything. So it's really just kind of a continuation. And that show, they do a lot of things well, but there are like some specific, like the cinematography in that show is like beautiful. There are, in this season in particular, there's like certain like key scenes that just look phenomenal. Like they just look really great, and I think they do a great job like with the zombie. Again, I know we've talked about it being kind of like worn out a little bit, but they're sticking with that kind of like Train to Busan zombie where they're fast and they swarm a lot, and But it's just during medieval times, so they're like fighting them with swords and shit. So it's pretty cool. So I finished that. I enjoyed it, and I also have been watching a show called Street Food, which, Bob, I think you watched and you've mentioned before, because I saw the episode on Osaka where the guy was cooking with a blowtorch and he was literally just dipping his hand in ice water and then just like putting it under a blowtorch. And I remember you mentioning that, and I was like, oh my god, that shit is nuts. That dude cooks with a blowtorch, and instead of using tongs, just moves the meat with his hand after dipping it into ice water.
Don't we all?
Just moving meat.
So that shit's bonkers. So I watched, I still got a couple to go. There's only like 6 episodes, I think, but I watched the Philippines one and the one in Seoul. And I've been to that market where they cook or whatever. And I watched one more, Osaka. So I got a couple more episodes, but that was pretty cool. Pretty interesting. Old street food. But yeah, that's about it.
The old meat movers. Cool.
Yeah.
Anthony, what have you been watching?
I just finished the new season of Castlevania.
Yeah.
Oh God, I fucking love that show.
Shit's dope, man.
It is
really
so good. And then last night, actually, I watched The Platform.
Oh shit! Really?
Yeah.
I've heard that's pretty brutal.
Yeah, it's kind of intense. There's a lot to it. There's some cannibalism going on. There's some socio-political themes, some religious texts, some literary references. It's this kind of huge cocktail of a very weird sci-fi dystopia. I think it's a French film. I think it's originally shot in France and then it's dubbed on Netflix. I highly recommend it. I know some people are enjoying it, some are not liking it as much, but usually that's a good sign when a film kind of divides people. You get some interesting conversation going around it. So highly recommend that.
Sweet deal. Anything else?
Actually, I was just going to say I've been really wanting to check out Kingdom. I haven't watched it yet, but I'm probably going to check that out tonight because I remember your recommendation on it.
Have you seen season 1 or haven't seen any of it?
No, I haven't seen any of it. I remember you recommending it a while back, and I saw it on Netflix today, so I'm going to probably check that out tonight too.
That's solid.
Sweet deal.
Have you done things with your eyes?
I've seen a couple.
See, there you go,
Describe
Randy.
them.
I'll let you have that one.
Thanks for allowing me to have a statement on my own goddamn podcast.
Oh, you have more than one, Randy, okay?
Aren't you being a little stupid?
No.
Yes.
Maybe a little headstrong, but not stupid.
I'll let Randy describe the movies that I watch with all of his fucking bumps. Is that cool?
Whoa, damn! Somebody's a little sour.
I'm not. No. So I watched this movie, Doom Asylum.
Doom, you say? Doom?
Doom Asylum.
Ah, Doom. That's a good film.
From 1988, which is released by Arrow Video. It's about this lawyer who gets in a terrible car accident first right off the get-go, like terrible car accident. He's not dead, but everybody thinks that he is dead. So they start doing the autopsy, and for some reason they're just like skinning the corpse.
Yeah, that's what you do, duh.
Start peeling the skin right off of his face, and then the dude wakes up because he's not dead.
Oh.
Could you put that back?
He murders all the doctors, and then like there's I guess he just lives in the hospital, and it like is very decrepit and abandoned, and then these kids on a road trip decide to hang out there because it's cool. And then they just get murdered one by one.
Oh, so he just stayed there for years.
Yeah.
Nobody ever checked in on that hospital ever.
He never went back to his life after he woke up from death. Okay.
So obviously this was a Best Picture winner, right?
Yes, 1988. Best Picture nomination, as well as Best Director.
Waste of time.
Rob, how's this coronavirus affecting your Blu-ray hoarding?
That's actually a fair question, because I think Amazon they're not getting any like new products unless they're essential.
That's Rob's internal monologue right now.
Yeah. So new releases, I don't think you'll be able to get your hands on.
You won't be able to get your hands on.
Yeah, I mean, unless they're in a store that is still open that you want to go to, which there's a lot of questions to be answered there. But
do we have the Arms of an Angel song on your buttons here?
Oh yeah,
on your
I already have it. I'm just gonna be withholding about it.
Slam that button, Randy.
I'm gonna slam this button. Right. There we go.
You got to be headstrong, Rob.
How many times are we gonna get sued in this episode?
Oh man,
so many. Doom Asylum is hilarious. It's got some of the worst acting I've seen in any movie. It's got that chick from Sex and the City in it. It's her very first movie. Kristen Davis.
Oh, okay.
The brunette actress. Yeah. This is her first movie. It's got a lot of gore. It's very enjoyable. If you want some pretty hammy 1980s slasher gore, I recommend Doom Asylum.
Nope, that's not what I want.
I also I know that's not what you want. I also checked out that documentary about Al Adamson. It's called Blood and Flesh: The Real Life and Ghastly Death of Al Adamson.
Oh.
It's on VOD. It's also getting a physical release put out by Severin, and it's also going to be included in that massive 32 movie box set that's coming out from Severin as well. I never heard of this guy.
Rue Morgue did a piece on him in their new volume, right?
Who did?
Rue Morgue.
Yeah, I think so. This name was totally unfamiliar to me until Severin started putting out all these images of this massive box set, and I was like, "Who the heck is this dude?" So he's like a B horror movie director. He made a ton of movies back in his day. He's known for doing it, dirt cheap and turning profits. So the documentary essentially covers his career, and they talk to a lot of actors and cinematographers and editors and all these people that he had worked with over the course of his career. They talked to his wife, his friends. And then the last probably 20 or 30 minutes of the documentary, they sort of transition from all of these movies that he's made, and they get into his real life murder. Like this guy, they say it in the documentary, is like this horror movie director basically meets his end in a true horror movie way. And it's just sort of uncanny and strange how it all unfolds. So
don't spoil this historical event for us, Bob.
Yeah, that's all I'll say. I did enjoy it. It's like I said, it's on VOD for rental. So if you're sitting around the house, self-quarantining or social distancing or whatever, I recommend checking out Blood and Flesh. It's a pretty interesting little documentary. So that's what I've been watching.
I'm intrigued.
Let's go ahead and get into the main event. We're talking about the cabinet of Dr. Caligari. With the back of the box.
What's on the back of the box?
I don't think this film had a back of the box.
Yes, it did. Anthony, you don't know. I have the box.
You are reaching an apex of sexuality right now, my friend. You need to tile it.
Rob puts it all in the eyebrows.
I don't have enough room for the boner under my desk.
You're so exclusive.
You got to get one of those stand-up desks. You can ratchet it up,
Oh yeah. Well, don't worry. I've got a, shall we say, a device for that right now. So
shall we say?
Things are happening.
It's just a big hole in the desk. You just drill the hole. Oh, YouTube exclusive. Randy's Wiener's lifting his laptop. All right, we're talking The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari from 1920. This movie is a cool century-old, directed by Robert Vane. I'm going to assume that's how you pronounce that.
You're German, Bob. You should know.
Come on, Rob.
Yeah.
Mr. Knoll.
Whatever does he keep inside of his cabinet?
Herr Button.
I want to know, don't you?
Jesus Christ.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah.
Peace out.
Sorry.
It's been great. Gotta go.
I think I just caught a little bit of the Rona.
Coming down with the Rona. The synopsis is as follows. Hypnotist Dr. Caligari uses a somnambulist, Caesar, to commit murders. That's not a particularly great synopsis. Thanks, IMDb, for nothing.
For nothing.
So, have you guys seen this movie before? Would you recommend people check it out? Randy?
I have seen this movie in bits. I had never seen it sat down all the way through. I have, shall we say, a tendency to get very, very stoned and then watch silent films while listening to Muse.
Cool.
It's
while listening to Muse.
While listening to Muse, yes, specifically Muse.
Okay.
It's always good. It's
Cool.
always good. So I have done that.
Do you have like a
but
go-to record? Or is it just any Muse?
Black Holes in Revelation, excuse
Black
me.
Holes? Cool.
That's a pretty good
Buttholes
one.
and Revelations.
Buttholes and Revelations, you know? That's just the one I always go to because
I licked her asshole a little bit.
Gotta lick a little asshole.
All buttholes come with revelations.
So yes, I've seen this, but not really seen it. Like I was very, very stoned. I watched this sober for the first time, and with I don't know if it's the original soundtrack. I have no idea the history of this.
Did you watch it on YouTube?
I did. Eventually, I started watching it somewhere else, and I was like, "This is unwatchably blurry." So like, you have to be careful where you find
the one
it.
on YouTube's clean as shit.
No, it's they have an HD 1080p thing.
But I'm glad
best.
you listened to that one with the soundtrack. In the title, it says like original score, like replayed or whatever. Like,
does it? I missed it
original,
then.
yeah.
Because
Because I had to check. I was like, this is
also
wild.
Also, the first version I found, which is on Amazon Prime, by the way, so you could skip that one. But it also had like entirely different music, which was like more akin to like, I don't know, like 50s fanfare music, which is really not fitting at all. So I was very much entranced with the YouTube version. So I would recommend it for sure, but really for cinema nerds and horror nerds in particular. But you know, I don't know that this movie is really for everyone. I think that people will get a kick out of it because it's such a visually stimulating movie, but not everybody has the patience for this sort of thing, and I'm willing to recognize that right out of the gate. I would say that if you are like into cinema, you consider yourself a snob or whatever, get in there, watch this fucking movie before you lose all your cred, and then, you know, anybody else, you could take a chance on it. Sure, it's only an hour and 20 minutes at its longest, so give it a shot.
Cool. Juice, what about you?
Yeah, I would recommend watching this. I found it like beautifully fascinating, but I watched it in like 3 parts. So it is a 100-year-old 1920 silent film that's 80 minutes long, which to me like is pretty long for a silent movie.
Man.
So
This is like 3.5 hours or something.
real holy shit. Okay, so I was just thinking like, God, even back in the day, like, God, this movie's 100 years old, watching it 80 minutes long. I don't know, I thought that might be long, but it was very fascinating, and the more I'm looking into it, and I'm really excited to talk about it today, it is just a fascinating piece of like cinema history. And yeah, I enjoyed myself with that. I just had to take it in like bits, so which was easy to do. It wasn't hard to like pause and come back to later. It's pretty skimpy on the details, or you know, it's easy to kind of jump right back in. So
cool. Anthony, what about you?
Never seen this movie before. Yeah, I've seen it a handful of times. And yeah, I'd recommend it. Kind of following Andy's message. If you're
Get real high and watch it.
Yeah, well, I mean,
that's always good advice.
Get real high and do anything, you know. Drive heavy machinery.
Yeah, around
pick
a
up
lot
your
of
kid from daycare.
Yeah, it'll be great.
No, if you're a really big art nerd, if you're a really big movie nerd, if you're a really big genre film nerd, then yes, definitely check this film out. It's the pure definition of important film. when it comes to like cinema history, which I assume we'll get into later on.
You
Nope,
assume too
just
much,
fart
sir.
jokes.
Just
Yep, that's what
just
we're about
butt
here.
jokes.
Yeah.
It's time. The tables have turned. My heartbeat just rose.
This was a first time watch for myself.
Which version did you watch?
So I picked up the
80s version?
Blu-ray. No, the Blu-ray that was put out by Kino Lorber. I did get that off Amazon because it was released a good bit ago.
Probably cheap.
It was actually pretty affordable.
It always
but it's got a
it's a
really
copyright-free movie, right?
okay.
Freedom,
Okay, everybody.
Public domain.
It's a public domain.
It's got a really great 4K scan. It looks fantastic. It was like painstakingly reconstructed from several different cuts of the film because there was no one singular cut that was whole in existence. So they put it all back together. They got the colors matched as closely as they could to what they believed they were back in 1920. Also, like, I guess there are certain cuts of this movie out there where like the timing is incorrect. So like I'm looking at IMDb right now and it says the runtime is 1 hour and 7 minutes, and that's wrong. Actually, that's you're watching it at the incorrect speed.
Yeah.
So they like slowed everything down and it like looks correctly and people are moving at the correct speed. They're not like hyper running all over the place or whatever. And also, it also has 2 scores that you can watch it with. One is like a more, I guess, classical, what they would believe would have been played back in 1920 at the cinema had you gone and seen it. The other one was the soundtrack or a score that was produced by a guy or girl, actually, I don't know, a DJ Spooky, a person named DJ Spooky. Which I watched it with that.
How was that?
I enjoyed it a lot, actually. Yeah. It's got sort of, so this movie is in 6 acts and the score sort of evolves throughout the course of the 6 different acts. It starts off kind of like a soft, synthy, spooky, not super structured. And then it, like, as it goes and the mystery is afoot, it gets sort of like detective jazzy a little bit. Like, okay, we're sort of trying to figure this out, put the pieces together. And I don't know. I thought it worked pretty well with the movie, and I thought that was a pretty cool little bonus feature that came on the disc. Also, it's got an hour-long documentary, so if you want to pick it up, Kino Lorber did a really good job on that. I definitely recommend watching this, specifically if you're like into cinema history or horror history in general. This movie is kind of a big deal. It's hyper influential, so if something like that sounds interesting to you, definitely check it out. All right, dropping that spoiler warning on a 100-year-old movie. Here we go.
Spoiler warning.
I can't believe he was crazy the whole time.
This movie has pretty good claim for a spoiler warning, I gotta say, more so than a lot
I was surprised. I honestly didn't. I didn't know. And then I was like, I bet this blew people's goddamn minds 100 years ago.
People's tits were popping watching this fucking
that was
movie.
not the thing. Can I say, though, that this whole time I was watching this movie, I could not separate the main character of Dr. Caligari from Danny DeVito.
I had
couldn't.
the same thought. Specifically because while watching this movie, I was like, Tim Burton loves this fucking movie.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then as I was watching it, I just kept thinking of fucking Batman.
Batman,
the whole time.
Really?
Fucking
Damn.
Batman.
I guess that follows. Yeah, they probably did like model Cobblepot a little bit after this. I wouldn't be surprised to hear that.
Interchangeably, I just kept thinking like, oh, this is Frank, or oh, this is the Penguin. Like, I mean, it was just
he didn't boil a single denim the whole course of the movie, though. So
he did.
I mean, you could even line up Edward Scissorhands and Caesar side by side.
Totally could. Yeah.
Tim Burton definitely took a lot from the Expressionist style.
Oh yeah, like those crooked hallways and crooked windows, like that's
the roofs and everything.
Modern viewers,
looks.
modern like film people, or not even film, like modern audiences probably recognize that as a Tim Burton thing when it's really German Expressionism, which is just so far in the past that it's just not in the collective conscious about film.
Yeah.
We're changing that today, right?
Yeah,
here,
we
right
are.
now.
We are
You are,
changing
dude.
the culture.
Single-handedly.
We fix that quicker. God makes poor folks.
And that's
Yeah.
pretty goddamn quick these days.
That's pretty quick. Yes. So I guess we can get into the plot just a little bit here.
Can we call
So
this guy Cesar?
Yeah, sure we can.
Yeah. I don't know why not.
Let's.
Do you want to
it.
think that while he's inside his little coffin, he's making little observations about the metaphors in the Alien franchise?
Yeah, he is.
Okay.
We should call him the old bitch.
Yeah,
The
the
old
old bish
bitch.
Cesar.
All right, so the old.
The old bitch. Yeah, so we kind of meet our main character Francis at the beginning of the movie here. He sits down on a bench and he's trading stories with his pal, and he's like going on about how he went to this fair back in the day. And so it kind of immediately it goes into a flashback. So we're like experiencing something that Francis had gone through previously, and he and his buddy Alan and Jane, who they both are interested in.
Yeah, they're both like totally cool with being romantic rivals with this one.
Yeah.
Very different time.
They all go to this fair, and there is Dr. Caligari who is there, and he's got his own little like show that he's doing in which Cesar, who is, I guess, what he really is like a sleepwalker, as far as I understand. I've never heard the term somnambulist, I guess. Before.
I mean,
never heard it either.
Som is like sleep, and ambule is like walking. So presumably that's what's being implied. I don't know if it's actually a word that existed before this movie. I have no idea.
Because he actually like goes in, like at first we see him and he's like, I want to submit this like show to the carnival, and they're like, what is it?
Yeah.
And then when it like reveals itself, because I didn't know the term either, so I was just like, I'm gonna ride with
Nobody
this.
asked the questions about. Yeah, okay.
See what it was. And then I was like, how would that even be an act? Some guy opening his eyes and like,
look, this man's asleep.
Walking around.
He's definitely asleep.
But imagine being like not in the 1910, 1920s, being bored out of your fucking mind. Like no Netflix, no podcasts, you probably can't read, Most
like
people probably couldn't.
Dumb
like,
shit.
And those times when you fell asleep, there was like a 70% chance you'd die. So, I mean, just the fact that he opened his eyes at all was a miracle.
Yeah, it would be amazing if you made it past 30 years old. Like, I'm sure watching someone sleepwalk was the height of your fucking youth.
Holy shit, that guy's alive!
The easiest thing to fake. It's like, look, he's waking up, and like, why would anybody be like baffled by that?
You might be overestimating the amount of effort it takes to get a permit for a carnival act.
Okay, but think about like YouTube, right? YouTube culture. How many people watch people just unboxing their crap, right?
Hey, I get that.
I know you get that.
That makes sense.
You do.
Man.
Oh yeah, take that slip off.
Oh my god! Don't hurt it. Please don't hurt it.
The booklet. Show me the booklet. Turn the page. Wash your hands, baby.
Turn the page.
Slipping.
For some reason, they wake the somnambulist up, and then they're like, "Okay, he's now gonna take your question."
Yeah, now he can.
Why?
And they start asking like fortune teller questions, which
when am I gonna die?
I sleepwalk. I don't see the future, but I think you're gonna die.
Yeah. How long do I have to live? Alan, the character Alan, asks him this question. He's like, "Dog, dawn. You're gonna die,
dog. You be dead by dawn, son."
Yeah. So Alan's like, "That's tight. That's real tight." Alan
then
dies.
He starts
Alan
laughing.
Gets stabbed to death. We see like a silhouetted figure murder him in his bed. So the prophecy comes true. And pretty much they're just like, there's a string of ghastly murders that happens throughout the course of this movie. And we're, of course, suspecting that Caligari's behind it. We follow some police officers as they sort of get involved with Francis and Jane, and they're trying to, figure out who killed a friend. And it's just sort of like a whodunit, even though it's kind of obvious whodunit. And then, of course, we come to the end of the movie, and there's kind of a double reveal, I guess. They pull the carpet out from under you twice, which, again, I imagine back in the 1920s, you're like, holy fucking shit.
We don't have this many
pre-M
carpets.
Night. You haven't been Shyamalan yet. This is
No,
like this
yeah.
is the
I mean,
original
even
Shyamalan.
100 years later, I was like surprised because
Damn.
with
It's like
older
this and
films
Owl
like
Creek
this, like you don't
Bridge,
really
like-
know what to expect. Like I don't know
Right.
what I'm going to be getting, but to be like, oh, this was the OG.
A lot of times
Shyamalan.
they don't go with very complex stories a lot of the times in these
Yeah.
early stories because
Yeah.
it was for broad audiences. It was like, they could pick any apple off the tree at that point. And they went with this, which was like not I wouldn't necessarily say that makes it more complex, but it's certainly like a first, or at least on the scale that it was. So I think like for that reason alone, it's a pretty remarkable movie.
Yeah, it definitely is. There's way more going on in this plot wise than I would have anticipated. But there's I guess an insane asylum or some sort of psychiatric hospital
A quackery.
In the town, a quackery. And Caligari runs into it, and Francis walks up to the front desk and he's like, "Hey, I'd like to speak to your director about a patient by the name of Dr. Caligari." And she's like, "Okay, yeah, go talk to him." And he walks in the office, and the director of the hospital is Dr. Caligari. And so you're like, mind blown first time. Oh my
Also,
God.
can we just real quickly? I want to establish that
Yeah.
Dr. Caligari looks like he has some real scabies face or some shit.
He doesn't,
A real
he doesn't look
fucked up
great.
face.
He doesn't look great.
So that comes into
And
play. Actually.
strangely enough, he is only 16 years old in this movie.
Oh,
It's crazy.
How old is everybody else? 10?
Mhm.
Yes. Roughly.
Aren't you being a little stupid?
Bob?
Not at all. It's a
How does-
different time. A century ago. The roaring 20s. So mind blown times two. So we basically come to find out that Francis, as he's telling this story, is actually in the courtyard of that very same insane asylum. And he's crazy. He's been crazy the whole time. And then we see the actual director of the hospital,
And
he
everybody
sort of
else from his
resembles-
story.
Right. Yeah. They all
Cool.
sort of resemble the characters that we've seen in this movie. They're just a little bit different. And the director of the hospital, as he finds out what's going on inside of this dude's head, this whole plot and everything that's happened, says like, oh, okay, now I know how to successfully treat this man. And then I'll, kind of roll credits from there. So mind blown yet again. That's roughly
So
the
he was
plot.
crazy the whole time, or was
The
he?
whole time.
Let's discuss. Was he
Right.
crazy the whole time?
I don't
Probably.
know.
Probably.
Probably.
So
Probably.
I don't know if I should tell this piece of trivia until after we discuss that at first. Let's go through it. So the end of this movie seems to be sort of implying a couple different things. It's well known for being very ambiguous with its Shyamalan pull. So it's not a hard rug pull. It's more of like it just leads you to the question of, wait, so what was the reality in this movie? And
Yeah.
with this particular movie, I don't know that it really matters. Obviously it doesn't, because there's no hard answer and it's endured for this long. But the idea being that, okay, so was our narrator an unreliable narrator who was in the loony bin or the quackery, whatever they called it back then, something less genteel than we use now, I'm sure.
Less genteel.
So anyway, but like,
We've grown
so
soft in 100 years.
Oh yeah.
the question becomes like, okay, so you're led to believe, okay, so this is an unreliable narrator. He just villainizes the director of operations at this place that's holding him captive, so to speak, because of his illness. But then the last shot of the film is Dr. Caligari, or whoever his real life supposedly double is, who is cleaned up and has no scabies face. He sort of like takes a look at the guy and turns to the camera and gives this little quick monologue of like, oh, I see. He thinks that I am the fabled Caligari. Well, I think I know exactly how to fix him. And then they tighten up on his face and he just kind of gives a dead-eyed stare, and that's it. Not even a smirk, not anything. So like in another movie, in any other movie that you would watch, I would take that as an implication, and I do in this case too, that potentially there's even more to the story that we're not privy to, and this guy still has some sort of mischievous deeds up his sleeve.
Well,
or is at least not a good guy.
One thing I thought would be like kind of cool once I realized that, I was like, oh, because it does lead you to believe that maybe he obviously, I feel like the story was like imagined, but then this guy's like in an insane asylum. And I was like, what are like some things that happened? Like, one, his friend was murdered or whatever. And then the girl like tried to be murdered, but she was kind of like roughed up a little
tried
bit.
to
Like
be
she was, I mean, she tried to be murdered.
Tried to be kidnapped, actually.
Yeah. And I was like, what if it's this guy? Like, okay, so all of that and like the carnival is not real, but what if the director, especially like back in those days when there wasn't like the regulations and stuff, what if this guy is a patient and he is villainizing this director because of the things he sees in the asylum? So, okay, he wasn't actually controlling somebody, but in a certain way, if you look at these, you have 4 patients that are occupying the actual insane asylum: Francis, his friend Alan, the girl Jane, and then the guy who's sleepwalking. They're actually there when the guy comes out of his like storytelling, and it's like, what if this
Alan is not, I don't think.
I think Alan was
He? Maybe I missed
think
him,
so.
but I looked.
And I thought he was, but I was like, what if this is like the way of this guy like interpreting or trying to process the abuses that they're like receiving in this asylum? So yeah, he's not actually like hypnotizing or controlling anybody, but you're in an insane asylum in the 1920s, and this director seems kind of devious at the end. So maybe it wasn't played out this exact way, but it wouldn't. I don't think it'd be too far of a stretch.
It's like
to
how
think like how
an
he
interpretation of a
interprets it.
sick mind, theoretically.
Yeah, exactly.
I think a part of the reading of this film, you can't read it straight on, and you could kind of go on back and forth forever about, oh, are they crazy? Are they not? Like, a lot of this film is kind of pure subtext in a way, and having almost like that historical framework of the time of when it came out was like is kind of super important.
It really is,
especially as a viewer.
I was just agreeing with you. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was finished with that part.
Oh, okay.
Someone did.
So yeah, like I guess to build off of that, I was really interested in learning a little bit more about this movie from people who know a little bit more about the historical context of it. So I watched a few academic bullshit videos on YouTube.
Yeah. That's academics for
yeah.
you.
Well, I watched this one with a couple of silent film experts or something like that, and they were talking about specifically that this movie is widely interpreted via a book called From Caligari to Hitler.
Right.
That this movie was specifically geared towards being an allegory about the war, the World War I, not World War II. This is pre-World War II, obviously, but as a result of the war. And the role of the doctor is that of the authority figure, or the country, the people leading the country, leading young men in the form of Caesar or the old Bish into a situation where they are both gonna die and they're killing. And with the scale of World War I and the absolute brutality of it, it's tough to imagine that German audiences wouldn't have that floating in their mind just a couple years later or whatever it was. Yeah. So the idea that it's a kind of a loose thing, and I don't know the extent of it, but that's a huge, almost unmissable interpretation of this movie that seems to be pervasive from what I've read.
There are films like Golem and Nosferatu and M and Metropolis and Dr. Mabuse, where a lot of it is that is the focus, kind of the obsession with tyrannical rulers, in a sense, from a German cultural living perspective.
Now, to put that into context for this movie, this was the most interesting thing I heard about this movie. And it's a little bit of trivia, but I'm going to go and drop it now because it's vital to understanding it, I think, which is that there is actually a schism amongst the writers of this movie historically about whether or not they wanted that wraparound. That wraparound was actually Fritz Lang's idea when he was on the project. And then that got moved forward by the time the new director came in, whose name escapes me.
Robert
Fine. So he's he wanted this wraparound thing, and they wanted the little bit of a rug pull at the end. But the original writers of the film, really did not particularly see it that way. They thought, because in their minds, this is the argument that I heard, which is if you if you make the narrator of this story about a tyrannical leader sending a dead man to kill people, kill young people indiscriminately, if you take that and then turn the tables and make the tyrannical leader actually a good guy who's just trying to make the insane ramblings of a narrator make sense, like that completely it declaws the whole
it's fake
precept
news
of the movie, basically.
Right.
They wanted to the writers were very much against having that, purely because it, as much as it like added a thrill for the audiences, it undercut what they considered to be the point of the movie.
The oppressor was the good guy the whole time.
Yeah, it turns out. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, it is interesting, and like that's like I said, this like I want to know more. I want to read this book, Caligari to Hitler, to find out how we get to Hitler from that. I want to know exactly why this movie mattered so much in that development.
I think in Caligari to Hitler, one of the points is like Hitler being kind of the part of the apex of like German tyranny, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like kind of this ultimate leader who, it was like time and time again, like we keep fucking up, guys. Why did we put this guy in power? You know, and so you kind of have more of the maybe conservative's not the right word, at least in terms of like Germany's government, but like conservative, fascistic German populi who put Hitler into power because people sell it on hope, right? You know, Hitler was selling hope. Selling that, the economy would be fixed and, you know, Germany would be prosperous. But time and time again within like German generals and other leaders, like it's something that Germany has always had a problem with historically.
So yeah, that's accurate. And this is like, this movie came out before Hitler came into any sort of real like centralized power anyway.
He was still painting.
Yeah. He's still, still doing watercolors and shit.
I guess at that point,
he was such a sensitive artist.
So is George Bush.
Good dudes.
I know.
Good dudes.
I guess at that time, Hitler would be fighting in World War I, or at least just coming out of it.
Yeah, he was involved. So like, I don't know exactly what the like how this movie plays in with that interpretation, but I thought it was really interesting to put this all into that historical context that's like unavoidable for that in the short film or whatever, not short film, excuse me, the interview that I watched, they made a specific point that at that time 1 in 5 young men of war fighting age had died, and another one had been maimed horrifically. So,
damn,
you're talking about people who, he said like what they said was, if you had 5 guys sitting in a pub in 1919, by 1920 or by the year later, there would be 1 missing and 1 severely crippled in some way. Yeah. So, I mean,
time to scoop up the ladies.
Yeah, that's the takeaway. That's the takeaway.
Someone get my
asshole a little bit.
Hell yeah.
Someone get my glass
I just got an extra 2 ladies.
Some schnitzel and
1.5.
Have a party.
So yeah, so like the idea of declawing this idea of tyrannical rulers leading, young men to death, that it kind of like brings that idea to a head. It's like, yeah, well, it's a shame that they did that because of what is eventually going to happen to that country in a few years from this point. So I don't know.
I know the screenwriters themselves both fought in World War I as well, and I think that's partially where the inspiration came from to write this story.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, how does that not envelop your whole life if you've lived through something like that? So
right.
Yeah.
Isn't this like well? Now, I was just going to talk about like the horror aspects of this and like kind of where it comes, because a lot of it, so I know like Tim Burton has kind of like taken the style, but the distortion of the world and how it's it feels less whimsical, and the way that they do just like the shadows and the single shots where the camera like doesn't move, and it's like, I don't know, they bring the shadows in, or even the guy wearing like all black and like the eyeshadow they put around people's like eyes to like deepen them and things like that. It was like it was unnerving. It made me feel uncomfortable to like be in this world. It was on top of like, I guess I don't know what the implicate, or if there's any implication behind like the color, because it kept changing colors throughout, like the lens, but even just the shapes and the shadows, and just it was like, I don't know, it made my brain feel like off balance. Like it felt very unnatural and very unnerving, more so than like a Tim Burton that feel, I wonder now, because like I associate it as like kind of whimsical, because he did make like kids movies and stuff like that. But this
Huey, you know?
literally, like,
German
it did
Expressionism.
feel, I was like, God, this would like scare the shit out of people in the 20s, because it just feels like even we were talking about like Metropolis, or you mentioned Metropolis a little bit, the way that world like kind of feels just unnatural, like you don't want to be there, and it's like, oh, please don't make me like go to that place. It just feels so uncomfortable.
I kind of wanted to be there, if I'm being honest.
Well, Bob,
well, they're not opening a Universal section after this movie anytime soon. I'm sorry.
I'd be pretty excited about that. But yeah, everything's like very angular and sharp and sort of leaning a certain way. Like nothing's like centered up or squared, or it all feels right. And like you said, off balance, like everything feels like it's about to topple over in a way in this world. And the shadows are very extreme and like painted. You know, they can't light everything the way they want it to be. So on these sets, they like painted really deep, dark shadows. And I think the set design in general is just really probably my favorite aspect of this movie. Just watching it is like gorgeous. It's so fun to watch for me.
Yeah, I didn't want that to be a knock on it. It like, it's effective. I wanted it did. It was beautiful. It like, I know it literally is. I wrote down everything looks like a painting. I now know that they painted like a lot of the backdrops, and with the, I guess you can't move the camera with it set up. Another thing is too, I was like, God, they spent, sometimes you'd only see a set like one time, like the carnival, where they go and you have like several like things like spinning around like or whatever. And I was like, God, we only saw that one time. Like, how much time do they spend like painting and making that whole set or whatever?
What's interesting,
pretty remarkable.
It is. And like there's another thing, another nugget from that interview I saw was that there's some suspicion that maybe the painting was also a cost-saving measure, but there's that notwithstanding, though. Like, yeah, this is coming from German Expressionism, which was at that time like a huge visual thing with like static visuals, like block prints and shit like that. Like all these movies we've mentioned kind of germinated there a little bit.
No I see intended. What you did.
No pun intended.
Yeah. But let us germinate.
I was also wondering too, like, this is a new medium, like film and everything.
Exactly.
Like that. And I was like, how much of this too is influenced from coming like the evolution? Obviously, you're still going to have theaters at very prominent at the time for as far as like storytelling goes. Like, what was our entertainment for this? Well, like and you paint like backdrops. So some of it felt kind of like that, like starting to like find your way in this new medium, but still kind of going back to like what you have and what you know, and that would be like theater sets that you would have. So some of it felt kind of like that.
Yeah, and that's definitely true. This is a notable movie in part because it is like, it's widely considered in a lot of ways one of the first horror movies, like, or the first full length maybe. I can't remember this.
Nosferatu was what, 1917?
Was it? It might have been. Well, it's one of the first, and it's like this. It's clearly a horror movie. Like, this is a movie that's clearly a horror movie, and they're taking all of their things that are horrific from their lives and from the art world at the time, and they're amalgamating these things. So all of these like things, these things aren't whimsical. You're right, but it's because of the trauma that the countries had gone through.
1922 for Nosferatu. So yeah, this predates it by 2 years.
So, I mean, this is just it's just the perfect storm of very influential things coming together in a new medium, and that's why one of the reasons it's so notable. And it's absolutely the thing it's most known for. And most of these silent films that we've mentioned are known for is their visual quality and the ability of people in a protozoic level of film actually taking these ideas and you doing really interesting things that have at that time were impossible to do before. So they were doing them.
Right.
Just, it's just filmmaking's petri dish, this film.
Yeah, the aesthetics from this film were the kind of big proponent that kind of left. There was all these cinematographers from post-war Germany that were fleeing over to America, and that started working in Hollywood. And so you kind of, like, to use your phrase, germinating, there were these German cinematographers inspired by this work and the German Expressionist art movement, and that started translating into, the Universal monster films. And so you're getting kind of the first time, like basically the origins and setup and aesthetics of how a horror film should look. And a lot of that does originate from the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari.
It does. I mean, there's a reason that when we think of horror, like just the word horror movies, and we think about where it came from, the first things that most Americans think about are the Universal horror movies, Universal monster movies, rather. And there's a reason that those things are all very either European or Germanic seeming. Like they're either, even like Dracula, which is set in like Transylvania, like that still has a Gothic castle in it. And that's, I don't know, there's this movie, I think, has like Anthony said, has just a ton to do with that. People saw what they were doing here and they might have dialed it back, but they definitely borrowed things from this movie and its ilk that came up later. Nosferatu as well does a little bit of this. Clearly Metropolis does a lot of the German, like these angular and very like visual feast for the eye sort of shots. Faust, same. I mean, all these movies, they lead right into what we know instinctually as horror movies.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like even, going back to Nosferatu, there's that classic shot of you don't actually see him, but you see his shadow going up the stairs, like that's
shadow play,
Yeah. A lot of that is directly inspired by the Expressionist art movement, and the importance of shadows in Gothic filmmaking as well.
Yeah.
Oh, Andy has left the building.
Oh, Randy's got better shit to do. One small little thing that I noticed, whenever Caligari approaches the town clerk in this movie to try and, I guess, get a permit to show at the fair, the clerk is sitting on this stool that's like unnecessarily high up. He's like at his little desk, writing notes or whatever he's doing, and it's just like little things like that throughout this movie, like add an extra sense of like danger, like unnecessarily so, because like to get down from there you would have to leap, or if should you fall, it would be like way more detrimental to your health than if you were sitting in like a normal sized chair. Just like strange choices like that might not register immediately as you're watching it, but it just sort of puts you on edge. I like that about this movie, and I think that's something that Tim Burton kind of borrows quite a bit from in some of his later movies anyways.
That's a good point. And since you brought up that scene, I don't know if it has any kind of implication behind it, but it reminded me when you brought up that guy sitting in the very like high chair. He talks to the guy initially, and he's like, okay, well, like, what do you want to submit? What do you want? And he's obviously like the authority figure, but he kind of ultimately, once he finds out like his details, he doesn't seem very impressed, and he kind of like brushes him off to like an underling. He's kind of like, okay, well, you go this way and I'm going to go do more important things.
Well, that's the first victim too.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah. The guy who gave him the permits, he was the first victim off screen.
Okay. So maybe, I don't know if, I didn't register that, I guess.
No.
So I didn't know if that had anything to do with like, the feeling of like, I know, like even the idea of like later on Hitler playing like the victim, like, oh, we've just been brushed aside and we're gonna stand up and be strong men now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like we are the victims here.
You could see that, yeah.
I didn't know. It's just something when Bob brought up that scene, when Bob brought up that scene, it just made me think of that detail.
One thing fascism doesn't love is a bureaucracy not run by themselves. So the ability to murder somebody who inconvenienced you at the DMV might be really appealing to a fascist.
But it is the DMV.
It is. It is. It'd be hard pressed to find somebody not getting murderous in a DMV line. That's fair.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. There's some like there's a lot going on with this movie once you scratch beneath the surface. But really, the thing that like I think makes it so people are so aware of this movie is not so much what its subtext is. It's all about the visuals. It's all about, you know, this movie being as, I don't know, revered as it is as a result of the visual prowess that it shows, or just like the swings that it takes, and I don't know, the experience of sitting down and zombifying yourself watching this fucking thing.
One of the things I absolutely love about this film too is obviously if any of you have seen it who are listening, know that there's no talking in this film. A lot of it's just music and title cards. And so a lot of the performances are very kind of big and bold and dramatic. It's very much like a play. And that opening moment of Cesar waking up for the first time, and you get this close up of him just kind of realizing and his eyes are wide. I mean, it's gorgeous, but it's also haunting.
Mm-hmm.
Like getting those moments of just kind of absorbing and taking in the performances of everyone, I think is one of the big things too to appreciate from this.
It's that same thing. Yeah, I feel this way about, and this is not exclusive to this movie, but I always find silent movies, especially the ones that are like highly stylized like this, like they really they are haunting. They're haunting partially because of their age, just purely and simply because of their age and the lack of technology. It seems like a lost art or like a lost relic, even something as like well known and popular and vital as this is. It feels like you're discovering something that, you know, everybody else that you talk with on your day-to-day basis doesn't really know about. So there's almost like a little, I don't know, there's a little thrill from that, but it always seems like there's something a menacing story behind every action. It kind of seems like, which is why I get stoned and watch these movies and listen to Muse, which is great at portraying underlying dread. So, I mean, I love it. I love that aspect of it, and that's why. And it's not, like I said, it's not just this movie. Other movies have that too. Even ones that are like vastly inferior to this movie, I can still get that same thrill. And it's because of the technology of the time, the sort of like, it's like finding a hieroglyphic or a fossil. It's that sort of like thrill of like, oh, what is this? How do I understand this the way that somebody else from the time might have understood this? How do I just let it wash over me? What happens to me when that happens? You know, it just feels like something menacing is hiding beneath the surface. Unless there's like an overtly goofy silent film, it really does. Like those, it just seems to do that.
Right.
It just seems to do that every time for me.
It's even more like now that we're 100 years removed, but it is like this medium where you can see actual people. Like we're now coming into a time where like, oh my God, 100 years ago, you could see actual living like people like moving and stuff. And you almost want to be like, God, if I could just like warn these people or like the things that you've experienced in the past 100 years. And you're like seeing these people's lives. You're like, they have no fucking idea what they're about to get hit with. Like,
yeah.
That's kind of nuts.
World War II for starters.
Yeah, it's kind of nuts because like
it'd be great.
When you're looking at, you brought, you know, like hieroglyphics or just like old text, that the person like isn't there. But now that we are getting so far removed, like as far as technology goes, to be able to look back and see people like living their lives, like it's kind of weird. Like I don't know.
Especially in HD quality, it's weird to see these people.
4K.
Yeah.
4K.
It's 4K. Yeah, it's true. It's like God damn, it's before, like, when I would watch this movie like on VHS, or not this movie, but I had Nosferatu on VHS with the typo negative soundtrack, which I muted every time. Back when I used to watch that or whatever, I was actually an early DVD actually, but it didn't feel like, I don't know, it didn't look very crisp, and it was fuzzy, and like it seemed like even more could be hiding beneath it. James Rolfe covered this in that Cinemassacre review that we watched, which I love that guy, by the way. But it was, I don't know, there's something interesting in a completely different way about seeing it in this really crisp format that was like new for me this time around, seeing it very crisp. Like there's something about, like, okay, these are real people. These aren't even like as much as you see these people like previously and like within the context of the story as gestural ideas of people, actually seeing like, oh no, that's an actor. Like I can see that actor's fucking pores. Like it's crazy. I don't know. There's something like it just alters the whole experience. It really did.
Speaking of some of these, obviously it's a public domain film and it's available for free on YouTube, as we said a few times.
For free, Bob.
For free, Bob.
Yeah.
Robert.
Around here, that means big money.
Continue.
And so that for this episode, I went back and rewatched it. And the one I did watch, it was like 1080p. It was gorgeous, super crisp. But like the person who uploaded it had their little like channel animation thing at the beginning. And like I couldn't help but be a little upset. Like the fucking gall for someone to put their bullshit YouTube animation over of 100-year-old movie. Like get the fuck out of here.
You could have bought it on Blu-ray.
At least it wasn't like sitting in the corner like the whole time, like a watermark or some shit. God,
you know, Janus Films does it and nobody gives a shit. Why not?
Shit.
I'm gonna put out a copy of this movie on YouTube with our logo at the beginning. I've just decided.
You know, I wonder if there's anything against that. Could we do just like public domain?
Absolutely.
House on Haunted Hill, Night of the Living Dead, like.
Dude, I watch rapping at the beginning, please. Can we do that?
I watch films on YouTube all the time, and maybe they're
public
domain. I don't know.
You can even watch the 80s sequel to this movie called Dr. Caligari on YouTube. I don't think that's supposed to be there, but it is.
Well,
you can watch it. It's there. And I mean, boy, that thing stays watched. A few minutes will do you.
Who is it? Bob Arrow or what? Who'd you buy it from? Or who released it?
Kino Lorber.
I mean, they're out here selling this free movie for probably $69.
$69
with that holographic slip that Bob loves so much.
Got some lenticular covers going on.
That holographic slip has more technology in it than the whole filmmaking process.
Sure.
There's more memory storage in that holographic slip than in the whole disc is on, right, Bob?
One thing I wanted to mention as I think we're kind of wrapping up here is as I was watching this movie, I was like, I found it interesting that it seems as though carnival workers or fair workers have always been sort of spooky in a way, or maybe untrustworthy or something like that. And the way that this movie sort of plays into that, when you first meet Caligari, you're like, okay, this guy's pretty terrifying. Of course he's a carny. It just makes sense, right? But as the movie evolves and you come to find out this guy is actually just sort of a normal person, quote unquote, in real life is being perceived as spooky, who actually has a fair amount of authority, and he's just sort of infiltrating this fair and murdering people essentially for his own amusement. Is kind of an interesting way to portray that, instead of probably the more easy, lower hanging fruit way of just having a gypsy guy who was wronged and then curses this person to sleep forever until he wants him to wake up.
In the last movie we covered.
Yeah, kind of like that. Yeah, we talked about
those two movies have a lot in common.
About a fair. They're basically, that's a perfect double feature right there. Perfect. Highly recommend.
Boy, if you want to get to sleep,
Highly.
no way.
Yeah.
No way your eyes are open after that.
Also, Caligari, he's got the Mickey Mouse gloves on, so
He does.
influential
He
in other
really-
ways.
Yeah, Mickey Mouse clearly influenced by Caligari.
100%.
Absolutely.
100%.
Shit.
God, this predates
Did,
Mickey Mouse by like what, 20 some odd years or some shit.
I don't think it's that long. No.
No?
When did Steamboat really come around?
Mickey Mouse is eternal. He's always been here. I don't know what
It
you're
was
talking
before.
And he'll always be.
about. Always be. Do you guys have anything else to mention before we rate Caligari? No. That sounds like a resounding
Oh, just
no.
no. Okay, 8 years. Steamboat Willie, 1928.
28, yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, let's rate this bad boy out of 5. Randy, how do you feel about the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari?
I don't know what this accent you're doing.
Yeah,
It's not
it's
really
German.
German.
I feel like
don't
that's
think
pretty
it
obvious.
is.
I mean, it's maybe it's really more sexual deviant than it is German.
Yeah.
Germans are sexual
It's-
beings, right?
Wow. Well, sexual. Okay, I thought you were gonna say sexual deviance.
Oh,
Whoa,
no.
that's a racist.
We don't kink shame.
You're doing a racist right now.
You're
So
calling
what
me
if my
racist.
what if my kink is to kink shame? Then would you be kink
Uh,
shaming me
you
to
have
tell
to-
me not to kink
Can
shame?
God move a mountain that He Himself not be
So
moved or whatever?
that would be allowed, but specifically in the bedroom. You can't bring that out.
Okay.
You see,
Oh.
then that's not cool.
But no, you
Yeah.
say no kink
So when you're
shaming.
fucking
so
a lady,
if
you're complaining
telling-
about people's kinks. That's your thing. Okay.
Yeah, whatever it takes,
All right.
man.
Around here, that means big money.
Yeah,
hmm
kink shaming.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so my feelings towards
Out
this
of
movie.
5.
I'm trying unsuccessfully to come up with a lot of negatives here. It's tough to put negatives on a movie that is so proto and so like at the beginning of things where there were no established rules. There were only mistakes to be made, and to make something as engaging in this that's lasted this long, I don't think that anything I say is going to add or diminish from this movie at all. So I'm just going to stick with my guns and say it's a 5. I'm trying to think of anything negative. I don't know. I kind of want to hear if you guys have any negatives, because I don't know what they are. The biggest negative I would see is like, I think that it's really compelling, the interpretation of this movie as an indictment of tyrannical leaders, and the
Mhm.
idea of it being undercut by this added bookend sort of situation. The bookend story is maybe a flaw, but that depends on me subscribing to that interpretation. And this very nature of this movie is so ambiguous that I don't know if I can really do that. So I don't know. I mean, I love this movie. Like I was just thinking earlier, I was like, I got to mention that scene where the doctor is walking around outside and is attacked by letters that are by words that say, "You must become Caligari. You must become Dr. Caligari." I thought that shit was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Like that's something that would look so silly and in the wrong movie, but because this movie is the age it is and it's swinging for the fences with everything, I think it's super charming and great. It's not scary, it's not spooky, it's just odd and surreal, and it's an experiential thing. And that's where this movie really, really excels. As much as I like some of the undercurrent stuff, I just like that's not what's kept this movie in the popular consciousness, I don't think, over the years. They might be doing film studies of it without it, but they wouldn't be having like fucking a lot of screenings at art house cinemas or any shit like that. I think it's a really fucking good film that establishes a lot of fucking treasured horror tropes. So for my money, it's a 5.
Establishes a lot of fucking. Cool. 5 from Randy.
Sure does.
Juice, how you feel?
Yeah, as far as Randy's saying, like, do you guys have any negatives? I don't really. I guess my biggest thing with this, like anything that I could bring up that was like on the negative side of my experience, isn't really the fault of this film. Like with the not really knowing, I guess, like what the original score was or how it sounded or how it matched up to this. Like that's not the fault of this film. Like it was working with what it got. And again, like you said, it's in a time where there's no rules, and still with that, now there were times in the middle of this movie, so like when the guy ran back to the insane asylum, and I was just like, oh, so this guy is just like the director here, and there were times where I was like, this doesn't make a lick of sense, like this story's ridiculous, and then it flipped me on my head, like it surprised me. 100-year-old film, I was like, this is dumb, it doesn't make any sense, why would he just run? But then I was like, holy shit, motherfuckers, like surprised me. I legit was surprised. So that's, I don't know, man, I can't really knock anything on this film. I loved the shadows and the look of it. It made me feel uncomfortable. I wasn't like scared, but it was unnerving, like in a psychological sense. Like I did feel uncomfortable, and that's pretty surprising too. I don't know, man. I can't really knock this movie. I don't have any specific negatives. Like even in my notes, I didn't write anything down about any negative aspect. It's just like kind of long for a side, or well, it was like, but like I said, it wasn't hard for me to stop and come back and stop and come back. So I mean, I feel weird giving it anything less than a 5 because it's so iconic and everything like that. So I mean, I'll give it a 5.
5.
I couldn't justify not. Like I wouldn't know what I would say to like knock it. I don't know.
No yabos, right? So that's a 4.5.
I don't
From your
negative.
We have standards.
I know, Bob.
You're a man with rules. Okay.
I know. If there were swinging dong, then it would have got a negative. But yeah.
That's a different kind of head.
Hey,
Anthony, what about you? Out of 5?
So unoriginal, ripping off Tim Burton. Gosh, it's just so sickening. I can't believe it. And then ripping off Shyamalan too. Like, we're so sick of the twist at the end. Come on, it's 2020.
We've all seen Shutter Island. Okay.
Gosh, can I give it less than half a star?
Yeah.
You can. You can.
Yeah, you can.
No, honestly, I really don't know what else to say. This is why I shouldn't go third. You know, Andy sucked the words right out of my mouth.
I do love Meatloaf, so.
I think it's a really historically important film. It's a meatloaf of a film.
It's hearty and delicious.
Yep, and sometimes a little. It's a super historically important film. It's a gorgeous film. I definitely the faults I have with it are more of my own patience and of the time of the film, because I think sometimes it is hard to sit with silent films and being able to kind of get yourself in that mindset and just kind of go along with it. But like, that's not the film's fault. That's my fault as, you know, living in the era that we live in.
Shouldn't have chosen to live at this time, Anthony.
Yeah. I'm just an old soul. Like,
oh man,
I should have been born earlier. Yeah, I mean, if I give it anything less than 5 stars,
Dr.
I don't
Caligari
know.
will eat you.
You lose your cred, your street cred.
I'll just, you know, die forever. And but yeah, 5 stars.
Sweet. Die forever. Cool.
Right, Bob, come on, fuck it up.
Fuck it up, Bob.
Time to fuck it up.
1 star.
It's a 1-star film.
My only complaint with this movie is the dialogue was mixed so low I couldn't hear it at all.
Oh.
So
Interesting.
that's definitely a negative.
They don't have that
Bob.
on your Blu-ray, Bob.
Your Blu-ray.
$69 well spent.
I don't really have any negatives for this movie. You know, I'm on the same page with all you guys. I really love like the art direction and the set design. It's just like it's so pleasing to watch. Like I want to crawl into my little TV screen and just like walk around these sets and look at them. I love how the movie looks. It's fantastic. It's really kind of all I wanted to add, I suppose. Super iconic, super influential. Obviously has withstood the test of time. So if I have 5 stars, it's going to be a 5-star average.
Whoa, it's a sweep.
Obviously. 100-year-old movie. We're talking about it today. not because it sucks. So 5 stars.
In the year of our Lord 2020.
Oh man, year of
Yeah.
your Lord.
The year of our Lord.
Our Lord.
It's been a wild ride so far. It's only March. Sweet baby Jane.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and jump over into our Rotten Tomato segment. See what the critics and users think about Dr. Caligari.
Dr. Cali, as we call him.
Certified fresh to death.
Doc California here. So
Dr. Cal. That's the remake that's going to come out
Dr.
this
Cali.
year. It's going to be like
there's already a Doc
California.
Hollywood.
With
Yeah, we should.
He's
with
going to be
Danny
token
DeVito.
and joking.
Oh man, I
He's
want.
real high.
Oh my God, can we make that happen somehow?
Wearing a Hawaiian shirt. The whole
Oh my
movie?
God, I
Yes.
just want to see Danny DeVito. Like, oh my, I just wanted to see him in this role really badly. Now that you brought that up,
Hey, this is my somnambulist.
definitely
Hey,
want it to
fucking
be
sleeps all
set
the
in
time.
fucking Los Angeles. Oh man,
It
That'd
should
be
still
so
be
cool.
silent. All I can imagine
silent. I love this. I love this
is
idea.
just this as an episode of Sunny in Philadelphia where
Yes.
it's
Oh
my
Frank and
God.
he's got the
Yes.
hair like, and it's
Paging
Charlie.
Rob McElhenney.
Dude, it could be Charlie and
It could be Charlie. It could
The
definitely
gang
be Charlie.
remakes The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari.
And you've got Jane, and you've got Cricket, and you've got,
Actually,
oh my God.
do you know what I
love this.
thought of?
Fucking
There was
love this.
the one scene where he creeps in on the girl and he's wearing the all black. I thought of Charlie's Play where Mac is like in the all black and he's
Yeah,
like
the
creeping
leotard.
or whatever.
Hey, man.
It's like, oh
Dude, this we just did their job for him. I love it.
Yeah. And
So
somebody's gonna lick somebody's asshole just a little bit.
my God.
oh my God.
And I licked her asshole a little bit.
Anyway, so we're in the Rotten Tomatoes segment, which on our podcast means that I'm going to go around our digital table and ask these gentlemen what they think the critics and also the users thought of this movie and a score out of 100, 0 to 100%. Was it 100% positive? Was it 0% positive? We're about to find out. So let's start with Juice. What do you think the critics said about this film? There are 51 critic reviews.
51. All right.
Mm.
I'll go high, but not too high. So I'm not going to go with the hundo. I'll say 96 because it's the flip of 69.
Oh, it's butt to back of head.
Yeah,
Everybody's favorite.
that's my favorite position.
That's your kink, and I won't shame you.
Don't shame me,
girl.
Randy. Unless
I'm
that's
gonna
your
fart on
shame.
your skull.
Anthony, I'm not going to make you go third this time. What do you think?
I'm gonna go with 100.
100. All right.
Mhm.
That's a bold ass, dare I say, prediction. And Rob, I'm gonna need your score now. What are you thinking out of 100?
100.
I'm gonna do 69 plus
Oh,
26.
Okay, you're gonna do that math for me because I don't wanna.
I'll
it's
take a 95.
95.
95. All right. Perfect. Perfect.
Bob with the math. That's a weird shit.
Yeah,
you
ding,
got
ding,
there, Bob.
ding. We got us a on the nose winner right now.
Oh my lord.
And it goes to our esteemed colleague and friend Anthony for getting 100. This is a
Anthony!
100%.
I thought there was going to
certified
be
fresh
one
to death.
defector.
Anthony is the winner.
Nope.
The
As a
winner
matter of-
of the game.
As a matter of fact, here's the critics' consensus. Arguably the first true horror film, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari is a brilliantly high bar, or sets a brilliantly high bar for the genre, and remains terrifying nearly a century after it's first stalked the screen. I can't read for shit. Holy
Yeah.
fuck. I
Welcome
fucked
to my
up like
world.
3 times in 2 sentences. Or 1 run-on sentence, whatever. Yeah, so there we go. Now let's do the reverse. Let's see what the reverse of this is. Bob, why don't you tell us what you think the audience score is out of 27,671 scores?
Ooh, that is so many scores.
Mhm.
I want to take the 69 plus
We'll cut
this,
off your Johnson.
plus
Uh,
the 31,
Oh my god.
all right, and now
please.
Aren't you being a little stupid?
So
Yeah.
100%?
I will take the hundo.
How is
okay.
it that you do all this math in the scores, but then when we change like 1 decimal point on our overall score,
Man.
you lose your goddamn mind?
Once it's written down, it's written down.
Oh
baby.
my
No going
God.
back.
Yeah, writing can't be unwrit, Justin. No
Hey.
such thing as erasers in this bish.
It's in pen.
They
Bam.
have
Get a
erasable
pencil.
pins, Rob. They have erasable pins.
Uh-uh.
Get a pencil.
We're gonna get erected.
Anyway,
Let's get erected.
Anthony, why don't you give us your score out of 100%? What do you think of the audience thought of this film?
I'm gonna go with 98.
98 degrees. Good band. All right. Juice, what are you thinking for this?
I'll take my classic 96, please.
Classic. Everybody
From
knows
2
you
minutes
for your
ago.
famous
Classic.
96 score. So we do not have a winner chicken dinner in this particular round.
No
we do
ding-a-ling.
have a close enough winner, and that would be Juice Stains.
Woo!
With his guess of 96. The actual score was 89%.
Whoa, fools.
89. You guys really overestimate modern audiences' willingness to not hear people speak.
The old 69 plus 20 should have gone.
I
with
will
that.
say one of the things that made it hard with the length is it was silent, but then also
Deadly?
a foreign film. So like I had to pay a lot of attention. I couldn't like check my
Juice,
phone. It was
juice.
difficult. Yeah.
Do you normally have?
Aren't you being a little stupid?
Do I normally what?
Do you normally have a problem with length?
With length?
Damn.
Oh, shit.
Zing-a-ling, baby.
That was nice.
Okay. Moving on. Cool. Let's get into some trivia.
It's totally time for trivia.
It's totally time. So let me learn you something, Bob, right?
Stay in my brain.
The writer, or one of the writers, Hans Janowitz, claims to have gotten the idea for the film when he was at a carnival one day. He saw a strange man lurking in the shadows. The next day, he heard that a girl was brutally murdered there. He went to the funeral and saw the same man lurking around. He had no proof that the strange man was the murderer, but he fleshed the whole idea out into this film.
What is it about the fucking carnival, man? Especially in these older. I'm thinking like this movie, Carnival of Souls. They're not from the same decade or anything necessarily, but like a lot of like silent
Freaks.
black and white films. Yeah, Freaks.
Yeah,
fucking Strangers on a Train ins there. Like that's a lot later, but
Thinner.
that's a lot later. That's the class. That's Justin's famous 1996.
Classic.
So yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting. It's a like one of the most classic settings for horror movies, but it's not really one I immediately think of when I think of horror movie settings. Oh, it's interesting.
Yeah. Sets were constructed for less than $800, and the leading actors were paid $30 a day.
Whoa, that'll buy
Set
you like
for
a couple packs
inflation.
of smokes these days.
It's weird that they were paying them in dollars in Germany. That's so strange.
Yeah, totally.
That was a joke. That was a
No,
good.
it was
Deutsch
so funny.
Marks.
So funny.
I thought it was. I
Yeah.
thought it was interesting. Sorry, I was reading some trivia that I thought was interesting, and then it was not interesting.
I've been there
That
so many
story
times.
was interesting.
What a roller coaster.
Up and down, up and down.
Trivia.
I'm running out of trivia.
She's
for
a harsh
this
mistress.
100 old.
The trivia.
Yeah, she is. This is a tough gig, right?
All right.
No wonder
I
you
know
wanted to
it.
give it up.
Yeah, that's right.
You've prepared so thoroughly, and it's so obvious.
Oh,
that you have.
I am always prepared.
We're gonna get erected.
Let's
we
get
are gonna.
erected.
Cool. Well, let's just move along. Let's just
Okay.
keep on keeping
Hey,
on.
I think we should probably try and do some early hunting. How about that?
Whoa,
Let's get
first
after them
hunt?
cooters.
Cooter of the week.
All right. Who's a cooter? Who you got?
So I'm gonna let's talk in context as if what we see is real, because
Juice. What's a cooter?
okay,
We gotta let
yeah,
people
actually,
know.
that's true.
What are we doing?
all right, Cooter,
The
we
fuck
are
are we?
hunting them. They're people. We hunt people here.
They are people.
The most dangerous game, if you
Yeah.
We hunt people here on Straight
Yeah.
Chilling.
Yeah.
See, it's German.
Oh, that's German.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
German. Not what you do.
You
We
guys.
hunt the cooters, and then we
Okay.
eat the crowd.
Okay.
Okay.
So, Cooter type. must hit 3 of these 5 points to be considered a cooter. You've got sexual deviancy, smug arrogance, manipulation, attire, and overall patheticness. So what? Yeah, I mean, you've got a board, Randy.
I don't have farts on my board. It's my biggest drawback
should.
to the board.
So what I was saying before is at the end of this, it's like, oh, it's not real. But I'm gonna take these characters as if like, like they're real. So,
They're real. I dig it. I like it.
So let's see. Who do we got in this? I guess you got the Sleepwalker or Dr. Caligari, which I mean at this point it's kind of got to be Dr. Caligari if it's anybody, because I guess he's manipulating the Sleepwalker. If you can't attribute like any actions to the Sleepwalker, but at one point it feels like he wakes up or he is conscious of what he's doing. I don't. Maybe.
He's like, I don't know. Like it seems like it's implied that he is a sleepwalker who is somehow taken advantage of by Dr. Caligari, and he's somehow kept subdued as well. But I think he's a living person because he's presumed dead at one point.
Yeah,
I agree. But he's as far as we know is not acting on his own accord.
I'm surprised you guys are missing the biggest cooter in this conversation.
Dude, who is it? The old bitch?
Okay. Lay the knowledge on us.
My little friend, old Adolf.
Oh, Adolf. Whoa, Randy!
No!
I found something.
No!
I found something. That was perfect timing, though.
Holy
Thanks,
shit.
man. I'm learning. Sorry. So Adolf whom?
Heimlich. Adolf Heimlich.
Ah, yes, the most famous Adolf.
The Adolf to aspire to.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'd probably have to be Caligari.
It's got
Justify yourself.
Yeah.
In your upcoming video on Cooters.
Well,
released April 1st.
I'm gonna
fucking Mickey Mouse. Oh my god.
That's really long.
At the beginning of that video, it's gonna say "in memory of Justin," and it's gonna be like he's not dead, but this was inspired from his
April
memory.
Fools.
April Fools. He's dead.
He really is dead.
He's really dead. He died like this.
Oh.
Fucking hey, dude. You got it. I can't. No.
Oh, you can.
This is not professional,
No
Randy.
We're
We're
here
gonna
straight
get
chilling.
sued.
Are a professional outfit. Everybody
Jesus.
knows it. We
Can
say
we
it all the
please
time.
talk cooters? All right, Dr. Caligari. Can we be
Children?
professional cooter hunters here?
Hey, I queued up a drum roll for this cooter reveal, so you go ahead, I guess.
Okay, so does he hit 5 points? So you could say
Or 3.
manipulation.
At least 3.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah,
I would
3
say
points.
appearance.
At
Or,
least
I
3
don't
out of
say
5.
attire. I say appearance because the man has scabies face. That's
but he's
a
got
thing.
the Mickey Mouse gloves. You can
And Mickey-
throw that in attire.
Clearly
Attire-
drawn on to, yeah.
Attire encompasses overall look. That's fine.
Sure. He's dirty.
Yeah.
And my God, the smirks and laughs this guy makes really makes your wiener never want to function again. It's just not.
They're
pleasant.
grimy.
Speak for yourself.
I do, but I wish you were with me on this one.
A good doctor laugh. I don't know.
Let's see. So manipulation and attire. We need one more. He's not particularly pathetic.
He's manipulative as fuck. Like
That's why I said manipulation.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I'm
Got
sorry. I
that,
missed that. Sorry.
Manipulation, and then is he smug?
I would say so. He gives a real mustache twirly villain laugh at one point when he just lies to the police, like, ha ha ha, they didn't know I could lie.
You sons of bitches.
He does have that doll that I'm going to assume he also bangs.
Yeah.
That doll,
he
the old
does bang the dummy.
switcheroo. That shit cracked
The old
me.
switcheroo.
Wait a minute. This isn't a guy at all.
I busted a gut at that scene. We didn't talk about it, but the
The
police
old switcheroo.
the police go to take the sleepwalker away, and it's just a dummy, and freaking Caligari books it. That shit got me good.
That's too long.
Sexual. I don't know. He does send. It does seem he might be a bit of a sexual deviant because the girl comes to look for her dad, and he gets real creepy about it. And then that night, he sends the sleepwalker to because the sleepwalker doesn't kill her. He's dragging her out the window. So
I think he sent him to kill though, and the implication is that he's smitten by her. And so doesn't.
Okay.
He didn't want to kill her.
That shot of him leering over her and grabbing her is fucking impactfully creepy.
It's pretty fucked up.
Yeah.
So I'm maybe a bit of a sexual deviant in that realm. I think he hits enough. What do you boys think?
I would agree.
Out of this movie,
Dr.
He's
Caligari.
He's about as close as we're gonna get.
He's the first.
No.
So far.
Oh no, Cooters have always been.
Well, I mean,
Cooters are eternal.
In film, Bob, I'm talking.
No, I'm sure there's
the oldest
examples. Oldest we've talked about, that's for sure.
For sure. All
Yeah,
right.
the proto cooter. That's for sure.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Mickey Mouse.
He's the titular cooter.
He's the tit cooter.
Mm-hmm. That's what I
Great.
said.
He's a tit man.
This is great. All right.
All
we caught him.
Professional.
Let's go
content.
ahead and
We
talk
got him.
about some horror news.
Extra. Read all about it.
All right. So horror news. There's a bunch of stuff that is being delayed because of the global pandemic, the fucking coronavirus. So a quick update on some of that stuff.
Can we
there's
talk
a new
about people freaking charging $20 for a digital rental? That is some bullshit. Fuck
So
that.
we
I'm
mentioned-
stealing that shit real quick.
We mentioned last week that hitting VOD as of this past Friday, the new Invisible Man that just came out in theaters, Lee Whannell's Invisible Man, is on VOD, and so is the movie The Hunt. You can rent them, but they're both going for $19.99. And of course, this is definitely kind of unprecedented. So there have been day and date releases like this. But whenever that happens, it's usually a limited theatrical release, whereas both of these movies were put out by Universal and Blumhouse. So they got wide releases. They're probably in 2,000 to 3,000 theaters, something like that. And then this virus comes along. Nobody wants to go to the theaters. Nobody wants to be out in public. So they move the movies to VOD to try and make whatever money they can off of them, obviously, because they're expensive. So dropping it for $19.99 is sort of unprecedented. But, should this work out, it could potentially affect the way that movies are released in the future. If they make their money back, they might just be well, fuck it. We don't need to make all of, these digital copies and send them out to thousands of theaters and pay all this money to help, promote these movies. Maybe they'll just drop them straight on VOD, $19.99 rental day one, and it could be the way of the future. I hope not. That would kind of suck, but it's a possibility.
Can I,
Dude, don't
add on to
download
this
that
a bit?
shit. Why don't they sell it? If it's
I agree.
If it's
It should be a
out in the
$19.99
world,
purchase.
a digital rental for $20. It's I hope that is not the standard, because I already steal shit anyways, but if I needed more motivation to steal,
We're gonna get arrested.
I am
We
going
officially
to
do not condone that, just to be clear.
So I guess this is kind of a weird place to interject this, but I have a point, I promise. So Ghoulish Cast is coming back. We've kind of reformatted it. And I guess on kind of the new version of the show, we have one of our editorial writers coming on, Jesse Berberick. His day job, he works at the Museum of the Moving Image in New York. It's one of the very few film museums in North America. And he does some type of film curation there where he typically shows horror films. And so he wrote a piece for the site that's going to be coming out this coming week, kind of his perspective on this whole thing. And we have a really good conversation about it on the new Ghoulish Cast about the latent consequences of streaming from home and watching films kind of during this pandemic. And one of the things we kind of got into on the show was there's been a surge in drive-in visitations.
Saw that.
And how possibly this might end up being kind of a latent consequence where we might have some type of death of the multiplex and rise of the drive-in. But yeah, if anyone's interested in that, definitely check it out.
That would be dope. I don't want the multiplex to go away, but for drive-ins to come back, be a little stronger. That would be really cool.
Yeah.
I'd be
Around here, that means big money.
Yeah, I mean, I
That's my
could
take.
see, like, I don't know. I guess like going to the theater still for me for like what, $10? I mean, here in Korea, it's about like $8 for a ticket generally. If I go to like IMAX, it might be like 13 or 14. But to me, it's still like, it's not that high. So I did like to sit in your own house and rent a movie for $20 on a TV. You have to provide, and like a sound system, you have to provide. It just like, that seems like nuts to me. I don't
know what I feel about it, except this, like I can understand the logic of charging more because A, it's a new movie, and B, presumably you're not watching it alone.
Right.
So like if you're like, unless, I mean, some people are, and I guess they're fucked, but if you're watching with at least one other person, then you're making out about the same as a movie theater.
Yeah, I guess if your friend's gonna slip you a 10 spot, I guess that's where it's like kind of,
or like if it's your girlfriend or wife or some shit. Like,
yeah.
Like, yeah, you can ask your friend for $10. Go for it.
I see where they're coming from with it for sure, and hopefully they do make their money back. I mean, this could also potentially really negatively impact cinema. They could be losing a lot of fucking money on this, which would kind of be a bummer. But
here's
I know there's a lot
weird
of people...
aspect to me. Sorry, like that it's not buy when you obviously know it's available. So like, why wouldn't it be a buy? Like, no, you can only rent it. It's $20. It's like, we know it's but I know in this realm of like digital, like it's all digital, it's all just floating out there. It seems ridiculous. So no, we're going to limit your exposure to it just because it's brand new. But then in 3 months, you can pay the same exact price to own the digital copy. It just seems like bullshit all around.
I don't know. They're trying something new. Maybe it'll work. Maybe it won't, man.
I think one of the things they're taking into account too is kind of maybe the culture of modern movies. I see, obviously, like kind of being involved in like the film Twitter sphere of things. You see people so often complain about the movie going experience, people talking or bringing their kids into films. And so I think they're also taking in that convenience factor too, where you could just invite a bunch of friends over, split a pie, split the bill on this. And you can do it from the comfort of your home.
Yeah. But what if my home's not comfortable enough?
Well,
what do I do? I gotta go to a rent-a-center now? What the fuck?
Anthony said, get fucked.
Damn! He's
So in other news, there's a bunch of shit being postponed. Apparently there was yet another spin-off Walking Dead series. It's called The Walking Dead World Beyond. We've mentioned that briefly here on the show.
Oh, is that pushed? Oh no.
Yeah.
The first one worked out so well.
Wait, is this the first spin-off still going?
Yeah.
Is it? I don't know.
It is still going. So this one was supposed to premiere on April 12th on AMC, but I guess the first season has been delayed. There's a lot of people not working. You can't really work right now in certain, depending on what your job is, certain vocations. So they haven't finished production on this, so they kind of have to postpone it, which is, kind of not something I'm sad about. But
edit from home. Come on.
This is supposed to be. So this is kind of interesting. They're actually limiting this spinoff to 2 seasons. They're calling it a 2-season limited event. So this is not going to go on and on and on like the other 2 Walking Dead series have been.
Is it? Wait a minute. Is this the thing? I know that there was some talk about Rick Grimes specific movies coming out. Is this the result of that?
No, this is not.
This is entirely separate.
Apparently, that's also happening. They're gonna make
motherfuck. Like this and Avatar just are cockroaches of the entertainment world. They won't fucking die.
True.
This is literally just like that's just their money now. It's just become the Walking Dead channel.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is like a whole new cast of characters apparently. So this is just going to be
how
set
will
in
these
the world
people zombie
of Walking Dead. Yeah, it looks kind of like looking at this one sheet they have here. It's like kind of maybe got an 80s influence on the color palette anyways. It's like kind of neon, giving me some Goonies vibes a little bit, I guess. I don't know. We'll see what happens with that.
Oh yeah.
Whenever that comes out.
Goonies Walking Dead.
Also, Lionsgate has delayed Antebellum and also Spiral from the Book of Saw. Antebellum was supposed to come out April 24th. Book of Saw was supposed to come out May 15th. Also, a movie called Run on May 8th has been postponed. So they're moving everything back, which kind of sucks, man. Because I like going to the movies to watch stuff.
That's gonna be weird. Like when everything opens up again, what are we just gonna have like 10 blockbusters coming out at once?
They're gonna be competing like motherfuckers with each other.
Yeah.
Even the new Disney Pixar movie is gonna be on streaming.
You gotta get my attention. You gotta woo me, you know.
Oh, I'm a fickle consumer and I demand your attention.
Around here, that means big money.
You're not the hottest girl in the room anymore, you know.
I'm the just prettiest girl at the ball now, aren't I?
Looking at you, Chris Rock.
A bunch of my friends died in the war. I'm getting choosy now, you know. I've got options.
Whoa. Are we going into a tangent about the slipcase wars?
A bunch of they died or got named. Juice got options, man. Get out of here. God. The last bit of news I wanted to talk about is we got a new trailer for the second season of What We Do in the Shadows, which is an FX TV spinoff of the movie with the same name. It came out a few years ago from Jermaine Clement and the Flight of the Conchord guys. So this second season is going to premiere on April 15th. And apparently as each episode airs the following day, that episode will be uploaded to Hulu. So if you have Hulu, you can watch it the next day. And the whole first season is currently on Hulu as well. And if you have not seen it, I really highly recommend it. This shit is so funny. It's like so much funnier than I thought it could possibly be.
So let me ask you this. Yeah. Is it the same cast of characters?
No.
No.
It's a whole new cast of characters.
I kind of wondered about that.
Though.
Yeah, they do make an appearance.
Because Mark Proch is in it, and I didn't think I heard anything about him being in the first season. I haven't seen it, obviously.
Yeah. It's really funny. I don't know. Have you guys, Anthony, it sounds like you've seen some of the first season, if not all of it.
Yeah, I finished it probably a couple months back. Absolutely love the film, love the TV series. The TV series has a great cliffhanger, which it's usually, it's not like a serialized show. You can kind of jump around, but it's better if you watch it consecutively. And there's a wonderful cliffhanger at the end. If you're into kind of the horror comedy feel of What We Do in the Shadows, like Rob said, it's Jermaine Clement and Taika Waititi, so it's a wonderful crew of writers.
Yeah, definitely recommend checking that out. Juice, Andy, you guys have not watched that, have you?
No, it's been on the back burner for a while, and this might push. That trailer was pretty funny, so it might have pushed me over the edge into actually making the plunge. So
I think you'd like it, Andy.
I think so too. By every account, it seems like something I would enjoy. I just haven't sat my ass down to do it.
Hey, Andy, I think you'd like it.
Anthony's getting kind of aggressive. Anthony.
Hey, Andy,
you like it?
German
fucking
is
like
the
it.
worst.
I think you'll like it, Andy.
Whatever.
Oh boy.
You'd really like it.
I think you'd really like it, Andy.
that one is okay. You can use that one.
That's a pretty good scream.
That is.
Get over here, Andy.
Oh my god.
You're really gonna like
that. Just became
Johnny.
It's really gonna give the Tom Cruise Wilhelm scream of this show a run for its money.
That's my new favorite bump. You finally did something right.
Oh right.
It took so long.
I'm gonna give a nice.
Show.
Can I just give you a real hearty fuck you?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm not gonna like it.
All of that bracket of blood shit was just bullshit.
That was a waste of my time. Can I hear that scream? Damn it!
You walked right into that one, Rob. What were you saying?
All right, we got a voicemail. Yep. We got a voicemail this week. If you are listening to the show and you would like to call in and leave us a voicemail to be played on next week's show, you can hit us up at 904-638-3231. This week, we got a voicemail from our boy Rage Cat. Let's go ahead and hear what Rage Cat has to say.
Meow.
Hello, gentlemen. Here's Rage Cat back at it again. This time with some of what you've been requesting these past few episodes, which I've been catching up on. I'm trying to think of some life advice. And so my question is this. Usually I eat meals in segments, so I'll eat all of my fries before I eat the rest of my hamburger, and I'll be eating my mashed potatoes before my steak. So I've always had a problem with figuring out when to eat coleslaw. Should I eat that after I eat the rest of my meal, or should that be the first thing that I eat in a meal? And just to repeat the question, when should somebody eat coleslaw if they eat it in a meal in segments? If I have fish and chips and coleslaw, do I eat the coleslaw before the fish and chips, or do I eat the fish and chips and then the coleslaw? Thank you, gentlemen, and I look forward to hearing you.
Really asking the hard questions,
That
Rage Cat.
is the fucking funniest goddamn voicemail we have ever gotten.
My
Holy
cheeks hurt.
shit. That shit's hilarious. Dude,
That shit
Rage
was
Cat,
cracking me up.
you call anytime. Anytime.
Sounds
That
sober
shit-
as a judge.
Dude, that
man
was
is
so
sober.
quiet. And so, do we have a Keebler elf on the line? What's going on? He's just so
I had
quiet.
to
and
stop
distant.
laughing so I could hear it.
Literally, the Google Voice website says transcription not available, presumably because it was barely spoken at all. So I loved that.
Segmented
Coleslaw, man.
eater.
Man,
Yeah.
you got to
Dude,
mix it up a little.
If it's with fish and chips, then have one of the fish, eat your slaw, finish with the fish. Don't finish with slaw.
You don't want to finish with slaw.
No, you
Don't
wanna
wrap
finish
it up with
strong.
slaw. Yeah, exactly.
I personally have a really hard no slaw policy. I think it's pretty gross, except for if it's inside of a pork sandwich.
Yeah,
That's the only
I
time
tend
I
to
want it.
agree with that. Yeah, I'm not a
Yeah.
big slaw guy either, but I don't mind it on a BBQ sandwich.
I could do a slaw
Yeah.
dog, man. I could put it on a dog.
Get that off my
I want
dog.
it on my dog. Yeah,
I want
I'm a
that shit
kraut
on my
man.
dog.
Yeah,
I'm a kraut man.
oh,
I'm a kraut on my dog.
You
I
guys,
can't.
Rob just spoke.
you guys are
Can't.
putting nasty shits on your dog.
I'm a kraut dog. Kraut dog man.
Oh, that's not
Kraut? Oh
chill.
my god,
It's delicious.
that's
Ooh.
upsetting.
Yeah.
Extra sauerkraut on my
Ooh,
dog.
Rob likes some extra
Yeah.
sour.
Yeah. I know how you kids like them extra sloppy.
Oh my
Lady,
god.
you're
Anthony.
scaring us.
Thank you, sir. What is your slaw policy? How would you advise Rage Cat?
I am not a slaw person, but as
Mhm.
a food person in general, I agree. You can't finish with slaw. You got to finish with the fish.
Yeah.
You got to get the one crispy edge of that fish.
You finish on a strong note. You always finish on
Oh,
a
you
strong
gotta
note.
finish. But you see, the thing, this is a particular meal because you can split it up pretty easy. You start with the fish, you got some slaw, you finish with some fish. But if a meal is coming and he wants to, say you got a burger and slaw where you don't want to stop eating the burger to have the slaw, you don't really want to start with slaw either because you're hungry, you got your meal coming, so shit, what are you gonna do then?
I like getting it doesn't happen this way in most restaurants, but I've experienced where they bring the slaw out as sort of a salad.
Yeah,
I like that.
What up,
kind of thing.
nerds? Welcome back to Straight Grilling.
Rob, you're fired.
Damn.
Damn.
That's cool.
Rage Cat, Tell us the results of your coleslaw adventures.
Yeah,
We want
don't
to know.
start with slaw, and also
And please,
don't finish with slaw.
And please, for God's sake, calm down. You're just too amped up.
I would say if you got it, eat it first very quickly and get it over with because it's gross.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, if you only have two options, first or last, don't go last. Don't finish with
for
slaw.
sure. For sure. Yeah. Thanks for calling in, Rage Cat. Again, if you're listening and you want to call in and leave us a voicemail, you can hit us up at 904-638-3231. Do we have any specific questions for the week we would like to pose, gentlemen's?
No.
Yeah, I got a question.
Okay, we do.
All right, what you got?
Why are all of you so goddamn beautiful?
Ooh.
Wow.
I don't know.
It's because all my good-looking friends died in the war. So it's subjective.
Justin was sniping them himself.
I'm not standing next to Strong Jaw Tony no more.
Yeah. He got a bullet real quick.
That jaw is so damn noticeable. Oh boy.
So yeah, all right. You can call in and talk about that if you want to. 904-638-3231.
Get advice from us, Dear Abby style. You can do it.
Yeah.
Rage Cat just got really good.
Yeah, we solved that slaw problem real good.
Yeah, we knocked that shit right off the list.
We solved the slaw.
We solved slaw solved.
We did it. That is going to do it for us this week here at Straight Chilling. Big thanks to Anthony for joining us yet again. Anthony, I'd like for you to remind everybody where they can find your spooky doings, sir.
Yeah, of course. Thank you guys for having me on. It's always a pleasure hanging with the straight grill and chew.
Jeez.
It's really nailing to the wall here, Bob. What are you going to do about it?
Woo, I'm sweating.
Dude, you pop a molly? You sweating?
But yeah, if you want to hear more of me and enjoy more horror things in your life, which I know you do, you can find all of our spooky ghoulish doings at somethingghoulish.com. We have weekly horror editorials that explore the genre. We have a series of podcasts. If you're into classic films such as The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, you can check out our podcast of Gods and Monsters. Covers all sorts of classic horror goodness. And if you just want to follow me personally, you can follow me on Twitter at @AMDarrington.
Or at his job and place of work.
Yep. I'm working remotely currently, but you could try.
You could peer through the windows. It's perfect.
Oh, yeah.
Here's his home address.
Yep.
I know it.
I'm out there right now. That sounds terrible.
Never play that
Randy,
one.
We're going to play. That's a 24-second long clip.
Jeez. But yeah, thank you, Anthony. Sir, we'll definitely have you back on for too long. Until next week, please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. You can follow us on Twitter at STR8_chilling, on Instagram at Straight Chilling Podcast. You send us an email through our website, straightchillingpodcast.com. If you want to join us on our Slack channel, let me know via any one of those social media outlets, and I'll send you a link so you can join in on the Slack channel. Daily conversations. We talk about the movie of the week. We talk about horror TV, music, news, YouTube stuff, video games, anything and everything that we want. Next week, we're going to be talking about the winner of the March poll pick, which was the creature from the Black Rangoon.
Rangoon.
I like some crab rangoon.
Don't we all? Don't we all? So make sure you slam
we
your eyeballs
sticking
into that.
old this month. God
We
damn.
sticking old. We are sticking.
Not a pigment
Sticking old.
between the three of us this month.
We're the stickiest, oldest people you will ever meet. I promise you that. Definitely check out Creature from the Black Rangoon. Get ready for next week's show.
Sticky.
Covered in maple syrup, baby.
Probably because all my friends died in the war. Now I'm swimming in ladies.
Thank you. Oh, sweet baby. That's. I gotta stop talking. Until next week, all you mother truckers,
Keep
please.
grilling.
Keep grilling. Damn it!
We're going to push this fucking joke home. Yes, we are.
Headstrong,
Bye, folks.